Howdy, folks. Happy Tuesday. We still have a Stanley Cup final, and we'll discuss that game with our guest, Joe Yerdon and Russ. Russ will start us off with the pre-show. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I saw a note on Twitter today that Terry Funk has dementia, and I have to tell you, there was something that he really gave me a thrill one time. We were doing a lot of wrestling interviews at one time, and I gotten phone numbers of them because it was for a wrestling game, and we interviewed a bunch of guys, Ultimate Warrior, a lot, probably like 10 or 12 great wrestlers of all time. And I had Funk's number, and when everybody was coming out with their, hey, you know what, I did steroids kind of thing, I wanted to get a wrestler on, and I thought Funk was always a great talker, and he's actually pretty intelligent. Like, I know he comes off as, as a rednecky kind of guy and the Double Cross Ranch. And I always wanted to visit the Double Cross Ranch when I was a kid, even though he probably would shoot me on sight, I still wanted to visit. It would be like going to visit Jesse James or something. You just take your life in your own hands. But his brother seemed nicer, Dory, so he probably would stop Terry from killing people. But anyhow, the idea was, let's get him on the show. We were doing a radio show, and it was with a guy named Dave Uncle who recently passed. I'm going to be going to his funeral on Friday. And so we did the show for about 2 years, and we were like, all right, so I was like, let's get him on the show. And so, just going about my business one day, and it was probably middle of the day, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and I'm just like, yeah. And he goes, Cohen. And that's it. And I'm like, hello? He goes, it's Funk. And I hear you've been looking for me. And I was just like, inside, I was just like, oh man, this is unbelievable. And then, we spoke for a few minutes, and he came on the show, and I was writing for Fox Sports and Sportsology at the time. So I did this article and I got the college wrong. So I just looked it up. There were a lot of wrestlers that went to like North Texas State, but he actually went to Western Michigan University, and he played football there. And that's where he said he did the steroids. And so, it was interesting to hear him say that, but as far as a wrestler, he entertained so many people. Like, this guy was great. He was one of those guys that would just start trouble before the bell would even ring, before he got into the crowd sometimes with the crowd. And, so when I saw that, I was a little saddened because he was such a good guy on the mic. He was one of the more entertaining guys, feud kind of guys.
Yeah. And Russ, I have to say, like, even though I don't think he acted in many movies, his appearance in the movie Roadhouse, which is, arguably the best bad movie of all time.
The worst cult movie of all time.
Yeah, one of the best bad movies of all time. Him as one of the original bouncers of the Double Deuce.
Yeah.
And then going over and then basically turning heel and going to work for Ben Gazzara.
Yeah.
But, it was just like it was his career. He was a good guy for a little bit, and then he always was the heel.
But that's what Funk did. Like, he was one of those good guy, bad guys. Good guy this week, bad guy most of the time. So it was good.
No, I was going to say one of his legendary matches actually happened in Troy, New York, during a WCW. I think it was a pay-per-view or something like that, which was weird to have one in the Northeast in the first place. But it was Ric Flair and Terry Funk in an I Quit match, which they hyped up for days upon, weeks upon weeks.
Yeah.
And it happened at the RPI Fieldhouse, which is even weirder because I think that was even before I think it was just as the Knickerbocker Arena was opening up, and that was WWF territory. So like they couldn't go there. So they went to the RPI Fieldhouse, and they had just an all-time match, which was just fantastic. And just the fact that those guys were going at it, and there just happened to be a young boxer in the crowd at the time by the name of Mike Tyson watching as well. So like that was their celebrity draw for the entire event, which was just bizarre upon bizarre. But that was Funk. Like Funk fighting Flair at that time was that was a huge spotlight.
That's premium. That they were both, and that's the thing. They could keep a feud going for weeks before the actual match because they were so good at talking on the mic and creating drama, and they knew how to do all that. Speaking of drama, my one and only time in Troy, New York, there's a diner there. My friend went to RPI. Mm-hmm. And I did see the field house, and Darren Pooper was the goalie back then, so it was all the talk. But we went to this one diner, and apparently they had like a 4-egg 99-cent breakfast, which was kind of unheard of if you were from Long Island. But you went there and you just So like, this guy that I knew, he was eating eggs like 3 times a day.
That sounds like a Mannery special right down in Troy.
Yeah. Needless to say, he was on Lipitor a couple weeks later because of the high cholesterol.
Yep.
All right, let's start the show. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, July 6, 2021.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And we are joined by our frequent guest, Joe Yerdon. Joe, we wanted to bring you on because we possibly anticipated a sweep in the Stanley Cup final. And I know a large group of fans in Southern Ontario are crestfallen because the stinking Montreal Canadiens, as they would refer them to, did not lose in 4 straight. The broom is in the other room, unfortunately. But the
dream is dead, Mike.
The dream is dead, but we'll discuss that 3-2 overtime victory for the Habs on a Josh Anderson goal. Josh Anderson, I think, has 3 goals in the playoffs, and 2 of them are overtime winners. Let's just talk about the game. What did you think?
Well, it was a very odd game because it seemed like, right off the hop, it seemed like Tampa was going to roll in this one because Montreal was doing the bend don't break thing for about the first 18 minutes of the game, and then Montreal pops one in, and it shifted, like everything shifted, and which it's kind of normal. I mean, they had 3,500 fans in attendance.
Yeah, no.
It was more than that.
Elliot Friedman was talking about that on the 31 Thoughts podcast. He says he thinks that either the ticket takers in Quebec were on the take because there was more like 6,000 or 7,000 than it was 3,500, or I think that's probably what it was. They just said, "Oh, hey, 10 people just walked by." I think that's what ended up happening.
I think they counted 1 out of every 5 as they came through. I think that quality. Yeah, exactly. They got the conversion rate for counting. So, but that's the kind of home game you expected, I think, out of Montreal. Really, I expected more of that in Game 3, but Game 4 that it showed up was more apt because I think everybody was kind of expecting the gentleman's sweep to happen. Like they would get a win in Montreal and be like, all right, go and win it in Tampa Bay. Obviously, the Tampa Mares kind of thrown that up into the wind, so we'll see about that. But now
it's going to be more than the wind. It could be wind and rain and flooding.
Yeah, just very awful timing for all of this. But
and just as a note here, a lot of our compadres in the media did not travel up to Montreal for the 2 games. They stayed in Tampa because of the the current restrictions, and now they're going to be sitting there with a potential tropical depression, hurricane, whatever that ends up being, sitting waiting around for the 2 teams to come back, and now that that game could potentially get delayed to Thursday if the weather is that bad. But
which we've never had in the Stanley Cup, having a game delayed because of weather. It's never happened.
And the weird part of it is that it's Tampa that's getting targeted by a storm, because the west coast of Florida, that doesn't really happen too often. Like it's always Miami, east coast of Florida that gets this stuff. So
but it's that July July Cup stuff,
Yeah.
This is how random the weather is in Florida at this particular time of year. A friend of mine lived in Florida, lived in the Tampa area, and there was the unusual Gulf of Mexico hurricane that came up through the Gulf, and they evacuated Tampa, and her and her fiance, I believe at the time, moved from Tampa inland to Orlando. And then the hurricane missed Tampa and hit Orlando. So it's so damn random. But anyway,
No, I was going to say that the thing that got me in the game though was Tampa's power play being ineffective, but also Montreal's PK being very aggressive. I thought they learned early on in that game, because I didn't like the way their PK looked early on. But the biggest break they got with that double minor at the end was that it came at the end of the period, because I think if that happens with 5 minutes to go, Tampa's scoring. Like I it's just easy to say that when it didn't happen, but
I did have that feeling. I think you're right on there. As far as the PK, I think you can put, Jake Evans in that and say, hey, that's a big reason. But also, with Jake Evans being in the box, if he were completely healthy, he would have been able to take that puck that was passed to him and probably get a shorthanded chance or a shorthanded goal. And you can see that's where you can see players are just banged up.
Well, just on that double minor, Joe, I know that there was some criticism after the game regarding the timeout that Cooper took to keep the number one power play out there for the remaining, I think it was like minute and 13 seconds. And it actually, it gave Montreal's penalty killers the chance to rest because they, with Weber in the box, they had Sherratt and Edmondson out there for, I think, the first 3 minutes of overtime. And to your point again, their power play, I think it was like 2:50 left, something like that, 2 minutes, 50 seconds left at the beginning of overtime. The first, I'd say 45 seconds was all spent in the neutral zone, and it wasn't because of the effectiveness of Montreal's penalty killing. It was because they were making those stupid drop passes back into the defensive zone to get the guy rushing at full speed, and they were sort of gathering themselves. I'm like, okay, you're wasting valuable power play time here, gathering yourself, and in the end, their best chances were late in that power play.
Yeah, the drop pass thing gets crushed a lot, and for good reason. I'm not a big fan of it. Because I know you want to hit the line with speed. You want to do all that because you want to put pressure on the penalty killers and get them back on their heels. I get it. But like in that kind of situation where the Montreal just throws a wall up at the blue line, you got to do something. I mean, if you're going to dump and chase, you're kind of winging it. Now, granted, they had a couple of their best opportunities came on those moments where they just threw it into like cross corner or did something to try to get in behind the defense. They were able to beat them to the pucks and get something at least set up for a few seconds. But I mean, listen, retrospect is always going to be, hindsight's always 20/20. And I don't like the drop pass stuff. Montreal was doing it too when the opportunities they had power play. So I mean, everybody, it's basically a mirror image type of thing with the PK because Tampa is so aggressive on their PK, which I love about that. They just come right up on top of the puck and they're like, listen, you better make a good decision or else we're gonna have a 2-on-1 going the other way. But Montreal's isn't as aggressive. They just want to stop you from getting into the zone.
Yeah, I wish teams would understand that the most terrifying thing for a penalty kill, especially if they're in a box, is to have a guy like Braden Point take the puck up with speed, get into the middle of the area where he's not in the corner, he's not at the net, he's just on that half wall, he's got the puck, and nobody knows what he's going to do with it, and you all of a sudden your box is broken. But teams don't want to do that, and they do give teams more time to actually set up and block shots, and that's the part I'll never get. But my big thing here is, instead of focusing on the positive, and Carey Price was great, right? Like this was like 2012. We all knew Lundqvist had to win a game or they weren't going to win a game, and Carey Price helped win a game, right? So it reminded me of that. But the problem that I have is what would this team have been like had Kulak and Romanov been in there the whole time? Because their speed does push back the opposition. When Romanov has the puck, you have to respect the fact that he's going to make a play. When he gets a shot, he buries the shot, not like John Merrill. There's no slight to John Merrill. It's just he has no offensive ability whatsoever. Otherwise, he's great. I mean, that kind of stuff does make you wonder, where was that? We all knew it could be there. They decided it wasn't there. Tatar has set out this whole series, and he hasn't played since like late May. Are you trying to tell me that everybody in that lineup's better than Thomas Tatar? I'm going to disagree because Tatar could be a hell of a fire starter. I really think Ducharme has shortened the bench and shortened the lineup to the point where when it was 3-0, like Mike said, well, he's going to have to make changes then. Yeah, that's great, but then you're down 3-0. Right. He shouldn't have waited until he was down 3-0. Again, I kind of wonder if Cole Caulfield would have played in this entire series had Montreal been winning without him.
Well, Russ, I mean, the funny thing is,
clearly they can't. It's okay.
The funny thing is that, I know that you've been an advocate of Romanov playing since the Toronto series, and he played a little bit, I think, against Winnipeg when Petrie was injured. But yesterday was sort of a microcosm of the reason why they probably weren't playing him. He scores the goal, and then he was directly responsible for the tying goal, the 2-on-1 with Joseph and Maroon. So
I'll tell you, when I saw that play, I didn't particularly blame that on him and thought that was, hey, that's a good play. Are you trying to tell me that play is not going to happen to any other defenseman on their team?
No, I'm just saying.
That's what I'm saying. I didn't lay that one at his feet, but I get what you're saying. But the idea was you need the offense more than you need the defense.
Right.
If you're just going to play defense, you're helping Tampa out here. Like, that's what it boils down to. Tampa actually has to go back on their heels because they're worried about you scoring or, God forbid, playing from behind, which they've only done one time this entire series.
Yeah, and the change that was the most criticized, Joe, was taking out Kotkaniemi and putting in Evans. I know that Jeff Merrick, again from the 31 Thoughts podcast, says, this is a guy who's a core player for you going forward, and you're yanking him in game 4 of a Stanley Cup final. It's not exactly going to infuse him with a lot of confidence because you're, and not to insult Jake Evans, but Jake Evans is probably a career third, fourth line guy, and Kotkaniemi is probably for them, a future top 6, maybe second line, third line center. So you have more invested in Kotkaniemi than you do in Evans.
Yeah, but I think when you're pushed to a point like you're down 3-0, you got to switch something up. I get it from that standpoint, but taking out Kotkaniemi, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, just it seemed like just reaching for anything at that point because you've got other moves that you can make with that lineup, and there's other switches you can pull and not take out a guy who's been good throughout the playoffs. And
he's a good skater, good handler. He's better on defense than he used to be. He's not perfect. He has a little bit of a physical nature, and he has 5 goals in the playoffs. It's not like your team has got so many goals that you could afford to not have him in there.
Yeah, so this kind of felt like it was they're looking for like an emotional jolt by having Evans back in there, especially after what happened, and he had some fresh legs. Like I think that was the important part for them last night because his speed and his forecheck was really giving Tampa some issues throughout the game. But on the whole, like I don't understand the point of doing that. I'm not really concerned too much with the long term play of that. I mean,
no,
I think down the road, this is something that Kotkaniemi is going to have in the back of his mind, saying like,
"Well, if this guy,
you had this guy screwing with me. Like, I don't know if I want to play. I don't know if I want to play with this guy being around." So, it's taking care of something that you think you need to do now, and it causes a problem later. I mean, hey, if it turns the series around and they end up coming back from a 3-0 hole and become legends in Montreal, who gives a crap? Like that, that won't matter anymore. Nobody's going to care about Kotkaniemi, but. If they come out and lose 6-0 in Game 5 and get bum rushed off the ice, and Jake Evans is a -4, then you're gonna have some other problems.
Right.
That's assuming that he's not in Game 5, because I think you winning if you win a game, you're just like, oh, same lineup, let's go.
Yeah, they're going same lineup. They are.
Yeah, and the only potential lineup change for Tampa. And Braden Point took a lot of abuse yesterday. He got hit a bunch of times by Weber and other players. So did Kucherov. But the only potential change is, maybe Killorn getting back for Game 5. He skated in the pregame skate yesterday. If he comes back in, it's probably going to be Colton or Matthew Joseph coming out.
Joseph will come out.
Well, they liked the way Joseph played yesterday, and he had an assist on a big goal. So
I know, but Colton's the center. At the end of the day, they're going to need the center. But no, that play by Joseph was great. I mean, that was everything that he can do for you on the ice. But I still think that's the way that's going to go down. But look, Montreal was trying to soften up Tampa. There's no question about it. I don't know if that's going to work. I give Kucherov great credit. He's playing with a broken rib, and so he probably has a flak jacket on under there, and you'd hardly know it. And so it is amazing. I think what Cooper was trying to do to answer back on that power play is, I want to say, similar to what John McNamara was trying to do with leaving Bill Buckner in the field, because he wanted his guys to kind of get that goal and get the Stanley Cup. And it's like, we want it with our guys, you know what I mean? And I get it, but I don't think he'll do that again. I just think that was a moment where he thought about it and said, I'm going to reward the guys that are out there. I think they can do it, and it'll be great if they did it. Now it's like, don't let him get gassed, man, because you never know. Hockey's a weird sport. You never want to give a team a chance.
I get that, but I think given that Kucherov and Stamkos they each hit a post. I think Kucherov might have hit 2 posts. Yeah, especially that one very late where it just goes off the shaft of the stick and just missed. I mean, that looked like it was unintended, but like that was I mean, hey, hockey bounces go that way sometimes. But I mean, they were hitting posts. They're technically beating Price, even though they don't count as shots. Whatever.
Yeah.
Those shots were on target. Now, to me, it was more surprising that they were missing them almost badly. Like, a lot of their other shots were getting ripped a little bit too high, especially from Kucherov. But again, I can't imagine playing hockey with broken ribs and getting smashed around by Weber and all those guys all game long, because I would cry. I would cry the first time I got hit. I'd just be like, I'm out. I'm done. I don't need this.
I would cry the first time Shea Weber hit me, period.
Yeah, no. I don't sign up for that kind of stuff. Okay, but so Game 5 on Wednesday, with weather as a factor, so we'll be tracking that.
Weather a factor for the Stanley Cup. We've never talked about that.
Yeah. Dang. All right, Joe. Let's talk about the Buffalo Sabres because they made some news yesterday, and we'll talk about that first. The hiring of Sam Ventura as what was it? The director of hockey strategy, VP of hockey strategy. And he's been with the Penguins for 6 years as part of his responsibilities are director of analytics. This hiring smacks of the influence of Jason Karmanos, who's the assistant to Kevin Adams. I'm not that I thought that the Sabres weren't attuned to analytics before, but I think this puts a new twist on how much analytics will have to do with the structure of the team going forward.
I would disagree with you on the Sabres being in touch with the analytics part.
Okay.
Just because, and I'm not here to denigrate Jason Nightingale because he's been with the team since 2013, but when they put him into that role of analytics person, and I couldn't begin to tell you where his influence occurred at all with previous regimes and with how they were running things. I could not.
His background. Did they put him in a position that maybe wasn't generally his background? Because that happens a lot with analytics in this league. Is they hire somebody maybe great with certain things, can't really relate it to hockey, but they don't have to pay him a lot, and they hope that they still get the results, and they can say they have an analytics department. Like we see this with a lot of clubs. Do you know what the situation was with him?
I think his background was a little bit more scouting related, which I mean that's part and parcel with being part of analytics.
Right.
But he would when they hired Karmanos, they slid him over to be the assistant director of amateur scouting.
Okay.
With Jerry
Bro.
No. Why am I blanking on his name? My goodness, my brain stinks sometimes.
Okay.
But they Jerry Fortin, excuse me.
Okay.
So Jerry Fortin went from just handling college scouting and whatnot to being the head of amateur scouting.
Yeah, that's a big jump right there.
That's a huge jump. But in this case, getting Ventura, I mean, the Sabres, it seemed like their analytics department was just there to keep people quiet and be like, hey, we have one. See, we have somebody.
Right.
And then when they bring on Karmanos said, all right, I'm going to take charge of this. And he's like, this, I'll handle this. Don't worry. Like Karmanos brought an air of professionalism to this group because, I mean, for all that Kevin Adams is trying to do, he was unqualified, frankly, to be put in that position to be the GM. Right. So you bring in Karmanos to be an authoritative assistant. And yeah, I mean, this is Karmanos pulling the strings to get Sam Ventura. So suddenly this team goes from being, saying, oh yeah, we have an analytics department. Yeah, sure, guys, be chill. We have one, to being maybe they have the second best guy possible out there. He, like Eric Tulsky and Ventura are probably 1 and 2 as far as being authoritative voices in doing that stuff. So this is a huge change for them.
Okay, so let's talk about this practically though. So right now, that could be a big deal starting, sometime in September.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, getting ready for the draft, tell me where their talents lie to get European talent on that team other than just video and maybe not even having enough video. And they're not going to have any analytics for that. And if they start to apply it, they're just doing it based off of little clips or maybe some games that they see if they have the right service. So tell me where that lies. Because, when they speak about William Eklund, my thought is, I worry about this. I may have seen more than William Eklund than they have.
Well, Joe,
I think that's possible.
I know, and that scares me.
But this is the funny thing. Lance Lasowski came out last week and said that William Eklund was a player that the Sabres had sort of focused on and really liked, not for the number 1 overall pick, but if they were able to get another pick in the higher echelon of the first round, purportedly for a Reinhardt or an Eichel deal, that Eklund might be the guy that they would take with a second pick. Mm-hmm. And when I told that to Russ, I'm like, okay, where do they have? They don't exactly have a plethora of European scouts. So how are they sort of focused in on this guy when they really don't have many European scouts to sort of tap their expertise with? I mean, they have a few, but they don't have as many as they used to with the sort of changeover that occurred after Jason Botterill got let go.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin Adams made it a point to say that they were actually able to have some in-person scout meetings recently and putting their international scouts on Zoom to join them.
Right. Okay.
I mean, I don't know how many international scouts that is.
We do that with elite prospects, Joe. When we don't have the resources that Barry Pagula does.
Well, from what I've understood, what I've heard, the guys that are highest on the list are Power, Eklund, and Luke Hughes. Those are the 3 names that they seem to be highest on right now. Which.
Okay, let's focus on.
I mean, and also, Kent Johnson as well.
Okay,
that's another one.
Okay, so let's. I like Ken Johnson a lot. I think he's a great kid. He is going to take a little longer to mature than the rest physically. Physically, not there. Mentally, he is. His play is. So if you get Johnson, just know he's going to go back to at least 1 year, maybe 2 in Michigan. Then he's going to need at least 1 year in the AHL. I hope they know that. But that's what I would suggest for Johnson. Power, we know the deal. He's probably going back. And that message was probably meant for the Sabres to say, I'm going back. This is what my advisors want me to do. You draft me, great, but I'm going back. Then next year you worry about the rest.
Russ, it came out a couple days ago that Beniers is also leaning toward going back.
Right.
So
they want to all have a chance at a national championship, and I do believe that that's where that's all going to converge. But let's go with Luke Hughes for a minute, because this is something where he had a foot injury. He had a ligament injury in that foot. We don't know the severity of it, and everybody's been very quiet. Actually, NHL.com has done the best of updating everybody. It's almost like they are his personal update service, and they've been saying every month, well, he's going to skate next month. Well, he's going to skate next month. From what I can tell, he's not skating yet. And so why in the world, if I am the Sabres, I get it. They've got all the NTDP guys there. But why in the world now am I going to possibly spend another high pick if I get one in the Eichel deal, which is I'm assuming they're hoping that they get it, and put it on Luke Hughes when you don't even know how he's skating yet? And that is a big part of his game. That is not to say he won't make it to the NHL, because he will. But if Luke Hughes is a little bit diminished speed-wise, his processing isn't the best either right now, you're getting a different defenseman than you hope for. And that's where, do they know that, Joe? Or are they going to go with, hey, I coached Luke, he's great. I don't know what they're going to get on the medicals. Nobody does, right? And so I think it's a risky decision if they, let's say, had the 3rd or 4th pick and take Luke Hughes over someone like Eklund, over someone like Johnson, over someone like Beniers, over someone like Brandt Clark.
Yeah, I think this entire draft for Buffalo is going to be fascinating because I don't trust the scouting based on how they drafted last year necessarily, just based on the Quinn pick.
The Jack Quinn. Yeah, we can talk about that. I mean, again, I was not as high as a lot of other people on Quinn. I got the idea that he was a goal scorer, had a great shot, good skater, but we also knew wasn't a complete player, wasn't physical. There were other things that were going to have to work in his game. And then, unfortunately, we all found out too soon in the AHL because he shouldn't have been playing in the AHL. But again, I thought the Sabres did a poor job of lining up places for their players to play overseas in different places. It didn't all have to be the SHL. It could have been the Czech League. It could have been in Switzerland. It did, as long as you're skating and you're playing amongst men, it's a good league to play in rather than throwing the kid in the AHL. I thought that was a bad move, actually.
Yeah, and the other part that frustrated me about that was when they broke down why they picked Quinn as opposed to Rossi or Lundell or one of those guys. They said, well, big goal scorer on the wing, can shoot on the fly. And then at one point in Rochester, towards the end of the season before he was out, he was playing center. And I'm like, well, if you wanted to draft a center, pick one.
Lundell was a natural
you had many to pick from.
Yeah, Lundell is a natural center.
So, I mean, I was trying to tune out the fire engines going by. So
it's Stanley.
It's the West Side Fun Show here.
Firehouse 37, right?
That's
on
right.
Yep.
That's right. But I mean, like everything about how they handled everything after they fired Bottrell and fired all the scouts and fired all these guys in development, player development, everything, is that we don't know how it's going to play out, and it's going to take a few years to see how this plays out. But right now, seeing it in action is. You're like, okay, guys, I hope it works, because if it doesn't, like, this franchise is set back again for years. And that's where you're at with this right now. That's why this draft is so potentially huge and dangerous for Buffalo, because I mean, yeah, you trade Eichel, you get another, you're maybe getting another top 5, probably a top 10 pick at least, maybe a top 5. And if you trade Reinhart, maybe you're getting another one.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you swing and miss on 3 picks in the top 10, 15, you're boned forever. Yeah. Like, that's it.
You want to go back in Sabres history here, 2 consecutive years in the early 80s when they had 3 first-round picks, all of them in the top half of the first round. The one year they took Housley, Paul Sear, and Dave Andrechuk. The next year they took Barrasso, Normand Lacombe, and Adam Creighton. So of the 6 first-round picks, 3 of them were good, 3 of them were not so good. They're okay or not great. It's not an exact. Now, scouting has, taken leaps and bounds in the last 40 years, but it's still an exact science. And when you have a scouting staff that is sort of in transition here, and a lot of the scouting is being done via video, I'm sorry, this is not a draft I really want to. I mean, you have the number 1 pick. I think you're good enough that you can make the right pick. I don't know if I really want to invest my future in 3 first-round picks in this particular draft, Joe. I'd feel a little more comfortable if I was an organization, if I had been able to fully scout these guys and know more about them before I make such a heavy investment. But they seem comfortable sort of rolling the dice and getting first-round picks in this draft, and I don't know if that's a good strategy.
Well, this is where, I mean, but like, everybody's in the same boat when it comes to scouting, because there's hardly any in-game scouting, in-person scouting. I mean, there's some, but there wasn't a ton.
There was a lot overseas, and they weren't there for that.
Right. I mean, I'm just talking about North America, where,
I know.
It's
a
the
big
vast
world
majority of
there,
players.
though.
But, no, I believe me, I get that. But it's also a thing where teams aren't getting just hand over their 2022 first round picks, because everybody knows there's higher quality of players at the top of it, right, and throughout. Like, it's just automatically a deeper draft. Teams aren't just going to cough those up. If they're going to give up 22 picks, it's probably going to be second rounders. So I mean, if you get a second, I mean, hey, that's probably you're still going to get a really good player out of that. It's just you're not going to have like that potential lottery ticket of maybe, hey, team has a crap year, suddenly they're in the lottery, and then, oh, hey, they won the lottery. Hey, cool. Yeah. We just stole the number 1 pick. But teams that are going to be bad next year just aren't going to fork those over. I mean, if you're Anaheim, I wouldn't give up a 2022 pick for Eichel. If I'm the Kings, if I'm the Kings, I might be able to live with it, depending on what you give up in that deal. But Columbus, no way. Like, the teams that are going to be bad next year, they're just not going to give up those picks.
Let me give you an example too here, Joe. So it's like, I understand the goal scoring aspect of Jack Quinn. I do. I also understand, like you said, if you wanted a center. Now, someone, I think it was Vince, asked in the chat room, were they in on Holtz? And then when Holtz got picked, maybe it threw their board off. I don't think so. I don't think that was there. I don't think they expected Holtz to be there. So I really don't feel like that came into play. Like, all of a sudden their board was in like a distress. Yeah.
No, I don't think Holtz was very high on their list either. Because, I mean, to be blunt, they already have a player like Holtz and Olofsson. And I think if Holtz ends up like Olofsson, hey, that's, that might be the area where they're at. But the Devils might be happy with a guy that could shoot like that, or, can score at the NHL level like that. They probably want him to be a better all-around player, of course, but
that's fair.
But if you got that kind of shot, then okay.
Yeah. So getting back to the strategy part of it, I had interviewed Lundell, and, most people didn't think of him as a goal scorer. But if you spoke to the kid, he told you that, hey, my dad's a goalie coach, so I shoot on him, and he was helping me with goal scoring all along. I didn't shoot enough this season, and I think I could score more goals, and this is why. He gave it to you. If you listen to the kid, he told it. Now, I don't know if he said that to Buffalo. I don't know if he just said it to me and a few other teams. I don't know, right? But at the end of the day, when I picked that up, I wrote the article that, hey, Lundell's higher in this draft for me because not only is he a natural center and he can score goals. He comes out of the gate. He scores like 10 quick goals in the HIFK, ends up with 14, and Quinn scores 2. And so I get it. He's more physically developed, and Quinn's going to take some time to do that. But in the end, if Lundell turns out to be even a better goal scorer than Quinn, then this really was awful for.
Well, I'm wondering whether they got thrown off not by Holtz, because I'm looking at the draft right now, but by the two consecutive defensive picks that were made at 5 and 6 with Sanderson and Drysdale. Maybe they were aiming for that, and
I think they might have been interested in Sanderson. Joe would know better, but I don't know about Drysdale for them. I don't know.
But I think Sanderson, if he had fallen to that spot, they would have been very tempted.
Right.
Yeah. But Joe, I look at the next 4 picks after they pick Quinn, and in my mind, all of them are better fits than Quinn. Rossi, Perfetti, Askarov. I mean, they don't know what the future is of Luukkonen and Lundell, and everything was in flux at the time of the draft last year. But I don't know, they may come to regret that. Now let's just touch on Eichel here, because I heard something from Elliot Friedman this morning that I thought was curious. We all know that he's being shopped. We all know, I think ideally, if they get a package that they think is reasonable, that they would like to move him. They want to probably avoid the whole injury situation. Last week, there was a release from Peter Fish, Eichel's agent, saying that they were reaching or getting closer to some accommodation on the medical situation. But Friedman came out and said that he talked to one member of one organization who was in on Eichel and said that the price that the Sabres are requesting was so ridiculous that he couldn't even tell Friedman what it was, because I mean in terms of like how many pieces. Now I've heard something as ridiculous. I think it was Jimmy Murphy said something like 6 pieces. Let's be serious. You're not going to get 6 pieces for a guy right now who is a question mark in terms of injury. But if they're asking for like 2 first-round picks and 2 top prospects, with his health history or this health situation, I don't know who's doing that. I really don't know. They can't be asking for ridiculous top dollar for a guy who's got big health question marks.
Well, here's my feeling on all of this right now, is that the negotiations are happening through the media, whether it's through Drager or Friedman, it doesn't matter. Other teams are talking because they're hearing, they're obviously hearing what the Sabres are asking for. Kevin Adams wasn't asking for the world. He's not doing his job. That's the first part. You're not going to start with what you want, like what you're happy to settle for. That's not your starting point. Like you're shooting for the moon. And then that way, when you start to find your halfway point in between that, then you hit the point, then you're getting to the point where you're like, okay, that's actually what we're looking for. If somebody wants to meet your moon price, great, cool, done deal. Let's go for it. But the fact that, I heard Drager on GR last week say, they bring him on. They're like, yeah, the market's really heating up for Jack and blah, blah, blah. And then he spends the next 15 minutes talking about how Anaheim, they're not really that interested. They don't really want to give up a whole lot for him. And this team, the same thing. They don't want to do. It's like, that's not heating up. That's you throwing a wet blanket on top of all of it and saying like, oh, well, these teams, they don't really want to give that up. So, you're hearing it from one side, you're hearing what other teams are saying, like, wow, we don't want to give up all that much. And then you're hearing like, wow, Jesus, Sabres are trying to ask for the moon. Well, the gray areas that like the spot that you're trying to find is the spot in the middle. And, every team wants to win their trade, obviously, but like, I'm not going to take it as gospel that the Sabres aren't going to move them if they don't get, 3 top prospects and 2 number 1 picks like that. I mean, that's just an example. Like they're still going to trade him. Like, so, some people are saying like, well, what if this trade happens at the deadline next year? And I'm like, if Jack Eichel's still on the team by next February, lots of things have gone wrong.
Yes.
And things have gotten very bad because this is not going to be like when you're under contract, you're not sitting out for the whole year until you get traded. And Terry Pagula is definitely not paying a guy to sit around and be miserable and absolutely poison everything around you. Because if you think the passive aggressive stuff has been like quietly nasty, get it to that point where it's just going to be openly hostile. And like that would be very Buffalo if it worked out that way. But I just don't see that happening. I can't imagine this is a kind of trade that happens after the draft, because it's impossible to see any of that happening and dragging it out into August or September. It's just,
it'd be awful if it goes that long.
It'd be a complete drop ball by Buffalo.
Well, it has to happen. I mean, okay, take into consideration what we just talked about before about 2022 picks being a lot more valuable than 2021 picks. Mm-hmm. That maybe the Sabres would wait until after the draft to take the 2021 picks out of the mix. But you have to make this deal before the beginning of free agency on July 28th, because all these teams that have cap space, they have their budgets in place, and right now the money that they have is not allocated to other players. Once the market starts, the money starts running out, and the Sabres, they could be left holding the bag on a $10 million player, and teams don't have the cap room to fit a $10 million player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, you can always fit a guy who's a premier center like Eichel, and the Sabres would have to take money back. But Joe, I get the feeling the Sabres don't want to take money back, that they want futures and prospects, and they may have to take some money back just to make the deal work. But I get the feeling they're not interested in getting players in the here and the now. They're looking for players 2 or 3 years down the road.
I think if you have to eat an extra $1 million or $2 million to get an even better return, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah. I mean, I'm not in control of the purse strings, but I mean, for me, if that means I get an even better, I get even more. I shouldn't say get better, because you should already be getting the elite, like the best prospect, best pick. Like you should already be getting that anyways because it's Eichel. But if it gets you more, okay. Like I don't have any problem with doing that.
Right.
I mean, at least in Reinhardt's case, when you trade him, like that's up to the other team to sign him.
Right.
At that point, like, hey, if you want him, you take care of it.
But this is an organization that took less from St. Louis because St. Louis paid the bonus on Ryan O'Reilly. So,
that's a whole different situation.
Oh, I know.
That's the owner. That's the owner making that call. That's people kill Botterill for making that trade. That's the owner saying, like, you got to trade him before we pay that money.
Right. So, I mean, Russ, in my mind, like, what are your thoughts on this, on the whole Eichel situation? Because, I mean, for me, I think the Sabres obviously have to maximize the return that they get for him. But I think there are other factors here that may contribute to them not getting what a lot of people think that they should get for Eichel.
Yeah, I mean, I was told when I was down in Tampa from a really good reporter that he's hearing that right now the Sabres are going to have to accept futures, meaning prospects and picks. And you know what? I get it. Because there's going to be conditions on these picks too if they're the ones taking the risk on the surgery. Because again, we can't just simply write this off and say, well, they'll get insurance. It'll be 75%, and they'll be fine. No, when you already have a pre-existing condition, that changes everything. That means to get that insurance, the price will be a very high price for a team to pay just to get the insurance. So there's a lot of risk in here. We don't know what Jack Eichel is going to be like after. Most likely he's going to be the same. There's still the likelihood that he's going to be the same Jack Eichel. But if he isn't, then I'm paying $10 million a year. I gave up a boatload of assets, and now I've got him for a while, and there's no compliance buyouts. So why is a team going to give up 6 pieces? They're not. Or 6 elements. They're not. And so that's why I think things have slowed down here, because everybody got their doctors involved. Everybody's looking at the medicals because the Sabres refused to deal with that situation. So that they push that on to everybody else. But by pushing that on to everybody else, they're making them work for it. And that team is not going to do you a favor by taking this, whatever you want to call it, problem, situation, whatever, off your hands. They're just not.
Now, I didn't see this live last night because and Joe knows this because of our local cable situation. We get CBC, and we're very thankful to get CBC through our local cable provider, but we don't get it in high def. So when watching the Stanley Cup final, I'm watching it on NBC to see the game in high def instead of watching CBC. But in the intermission, they had Gary Bettman being interviewed by Ron McLean, and when they touched on the Olympics situation, Bettman said if travel costs and insurance coverage get worked out, we'll be going to the Olympics. But then he added that the insurance needs to include provisions for all risks, including COVID, which is very difficult, if not impossible, to buy. So as soon
the dagger right there,
yeah, Joe, as soon as you get the little bit of the sweetness, you get the vinegar with it. I like when it came out, when Bettman had his Stanley Cup final press availability, and he says, we want to go to the Olympics. We promised the players, but then the but came in. Russ and I both said, like I said, I think this is 50-50 or even less than 50-50.
I said less than 50-50.
Yeah, Kevin Allen said he still thinks it's 80-20 because he thinks they want, that they made that promise and that they want to go, but I don't know. Hearing this stuff, I don't know how it gets worked out.
Yeah, this is the every 4 years fight they have with the double IHF. This is what
it's worse now.
Oh yeah, I mean it's obviously the COVID's made it all worse. I mean, and honestly, like from a schedule standpoint, I don't know if this is the right time to go to the Olympics based on how they've crunched their schedule. They did the bubble, finished with the bubble 2 years ago. They did this compact schedule this year, and like the playoffs have been the compact schedule. So I don't know.
You have a team win the Stanley Cup twice in 10 months, which will never happen again in the NHL. Right. I guarantee.
Right. And I mean, listen, I know the players desperately love to go to the Olympics. They love it. They love the competition. They love all that. But man, I would just, listen, take a break from it this time around. Like wait till what, 2026. Just say, listen, this ain't the right time. Like, get all this other stuff figured out. Like COVID's still a bad thing. The Delta variant is even worse than what we started off with, which, hey, thanks idiots. But like, this is just not the thing. You got to be like, this is just not the fight I'd be putting up if I'm the players. I'm just like, just be happy you're able to get a full 82 game season in for once.
Yeah.
2026, it's in Italy, in Milano Cortina. That's fine.
Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
It's like Torino. Yeah, let's go to the breeding ground of COVID for our Olympics next February. That's just, please. I mean, I understand that they want to go. I understand, that like guys like Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid in their early 20s, in the prime of their career, they want to test themselves on the Olympic stage. I get it. If everything was right, I would say fine, but it's not right. I mean, and not only just COVID, the human rights situation in China with the Uyghurs is something that is also a factor, and people don't want to admit that, or people don't want to factor that in. Remember, in our lifetime, the United States didn't go to the Olympics because the Russians invaded Afghanistan. So it's not completely out of the question that other international factors would factor in this.
Yeah, but you know what? That was a different kind of politics where like
it was.
That was Cold War. Like people keep talking about how like everybody's kind of jousting with China about stuff. Nobody wants to deal with China. Like China gets a pass because they've got like a 2 billion person army.
I'll tell you what the killer is here. The killer is the Olympics, the IOC barely ever wanted to pay for insurance anyhow. Now they're going to pay for COVID insurance. They're going to do the same damn thing they did with baseball, where right now the Olympics actually have baseball back, and you're going to see guys that have been retired from Major League Baseball for like a decade playing in that. And that's what's going to happen. Again, it's going to be like the U.S. team at large, and now you won't even get the benefit of having guys, younger players that weren't in the NHL playing. It'll be lesser than that, and that's what it's going to be. And good on them to try and make it exciting. If NBC can make that exciting, great. I think some people will still watch out of morbid fascination because they'll like tweeting about it, but it's not. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Is Rick Reed going to come out of retirement for the Olympics, Russ?
I don't know, but I saw that they were doing some weird things like free Olympic tune-up. they were playing against like the Brooklyn Cyclones, a Class A team, and I'm thinking, wow, what a challenge. And I think it was Team Israel that was playing them. And even Team Israel is pretty good because I forget who the pitcher is, but they have a major league pitcher that's been retired for a while, but he's a good pitcher. And it's Jason something. And anyhow, but whatever. I just don't think this is likely to happen.
So wait, it's not going to be CC Sabathia and Mike Piazza playing for the U.S.?
No.
Is it? Oh, damn. Okay.
Well, Piazza would play for Italy.
Oh, that's right.
Well, if the battery was Clemens and Piazza, Clemens would just be throwing bats at him all game. Anyway,
there's crickets everywhere.
There's no response to that one.
Well, I was at that game, and I don't even want to respond. How about we go there?
Okay.
Oh, you know who the big star is? Ty Kelly. He used to play for the Mets.
I'm sorry, who?
Ty Kelly. He was an infielder.
Yeah, I think I remember him.
Yeah, he's a decent player. Nothing great. He's the big infielder, but I guess that pitcher may be out now. So he'll be the one guy that everybody says, oh yeah, he played in the major leagues. There you go.
All right, Joe. Just to touch on the last few minutes here, some of the rumors du jour.
Mm-hmm.
The Duncan Keith saga. Apparently, it's been out there for a week, which is unusual. Usually,
Mike. One thing, just because it just dawned on me when you said that the McLean interview.
Yeah.
And the fact that he didn't talk about the Blackhawks, bad job. Bad job.
Well, I don't know. McLean didn't even ask, I believe.
Right, that's what I mean. I don't believe he asked the question.
Right, which probably tells you, Russ, is that they know that they were going to get because it's under adjudication and they're investigating. He didn't want
on national television. You still have to ask the question.
He didn't want to waste the time to get the non-answer.
But you still have to ask it.
I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But okay. The Duncan Keith thing has been out there for about a week. Now if it was Seattle and it was the expansion draft and he was going to Seattle, or even if he was traded to Seattle because Seattle can make trades now, it probably would have been done by now. But all the connections seem to be Keith going to Edmonton, and nothing has happened. Nothing has budged. We don't know whether it's, Chicago wanting something back. There's been rumors of Caleb Jones, whether there's protection issues with it when it comes to, but I get the feeling, Joe, that if this doesn't happen in the next couple of days, it's probably not going to happen.
No, I'm not so certain on that.
Okay.
I feel like I've just been disagreeing with you all day here, so I'm really sorry about that.
It's okay.
I just, whenever you hear that a guy wants, it's a situation. He's been in Chicago his whole career, and when you say that you want to go, he's 38 now, 37, 36, 37, 38, something like that. And when he says, I want to get closer to my family, that's when you're saying, I'm about done here.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from Penticton, I think. So
yeah, that's where he lives. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So the choices are slim. Like it's Vancouver, which I can't imagine Chicago.
They don't want him. The words come out. They don't want him. Yeah.
And then, Seattle, they can make the deal whenever they want. Edmonton or Calgary, Edmonton just always needs defensemen, and it's such a getting a guy towards the end of his career like Duncan Keith seems like such an Edmonton type of move.
It really does, but it's a bad move.
It's not a good move, especially if you're giving up a guy like Caleb Jones, who's young and pretty good. I would probably try to hang on to him, but Edmonton will do as they do. Kenny Holland loves getting his superstar guys at the end of his career. Alfredson and Modano in Detroit, and he loves doing that. So that's his
Chelios.
Yeah, same thing. Chelios was still good, and Chicago gave up on him. That was a whole other thing. But
he wasn't still good in Atlanta. Let's be real about that.
Yeah, he and Peter Bondra in Atlanta were both like, "What are we doing here, guys?"
Listen, I gotta tell you, I saw Peter Bondra a few years ago in the alumni game for one of the outdoor game in Washington. That guy can still shoot, man. I wouldn't count Peter Bondra out of anything.
Oh, a buddy of mine plays pickup beer league hockey in Washington, and Bondra would drop in with his kids sometimes, and Bondra just schools everybody.
He hammers it, man.
He pulls it back a little bit for that kind of situation, but you can't get the puck away from him. You can't skate with him. He's it's not like he was he hadn't skated since he retired. He's still able to bring it.
He did the all-time most touching thing at a media skate for the Scourge of the Earth media like me and others that skate in that and love it. There was a guy that absolutely couldn't skate. Like, he kept falling down, and Bonser picked him up and skated backwards like he was his dad and literally taught him how to skate on the spot. And it was so cool. Such a nice thing to do.
Now, there was some talk that if a deal couldn't be worked out, if Keith wants to go someplace and a deal with Edmonton or a deal with Calgary or whoever is interested in him, that, Chicago might buy him out of the final 2 years. But the cap hit, they would get no relief on the cap. Literally almost less than $1.5 million in the first year, $1 million in the second year. And I thought this was one of those cap circumvention deals. So if there was a buyout, I thought there would be some sort of cap recapture, but apparently not. So,
but you give a guaranteed roster spot to Ian Mitchell. That's the thing. I mean, right. He is hogging up ice time now that he not necessarily is well spent.
Yeah, but Russ, I think the motivation here more than that is I think they want in on Seth Jones or Dougie Hamilton, and they want to clear $5.5 million off the cap. And
good luck with that.
I mean, that's their hope. I don't know. I think they're going to have to retain something with Edmonton, or maybe Seattle does it in terms of, because they have all the empty cap space, and it's only.
I don't think Seattle's going to do it. I don't think they care to do it.
Well, that's the one thing I heard this morning is that they're, in very few instances, they're interested in taking term on contracts. Right. They're going to play sort of hard to get.
I think they'll do Tyler Johnson simply because he will be a star from that area. But that's it. I think it stops there.
Now, Joe, to end the show, I think here's something that we can agree on. Yesterday, it came out, or a couple days ago, it came out that there was mutual interest between the Maple Leafs and Freddie Anderson on, a new contract.
Freddie Anderson talk.
Yeah, and then it came out. Yesterday through Darren Drager that Freddie Anderson is looking for $5 million or even a bump from $5 million. That there ends any interest from the Toronto Maple Leafs because A, they can't afford it, and B, I've been a big supporter of Freddie Anderson saying that he wasn't responsible for their playoff losses, but they needed better goaltending. They got it out of Jack Campbell last year and still didn't win, but I can't see them paying Freddie Anderson anywhere close to $5 million on a new deal. So I think he's gone.
Yeah, I think anybody paying Freddie $5 million at this point would be adventurous, to say the least. The one team I think could on a short-term deal would be Buffalo, but only because they might lose Ullmark. They have no goaltending, right. So they might just be like, screw it, we're desperate. Let's just get them in here.
Yeah,
that could be bad investment right away though.
Who are they protecting in expansion? Dustin Tokarski?
I believe so.
Oh my goodness.
Well, yeah, because they have.
Well, he was the guy that they were going to expose, I believe, at first.
But they don't have to protect Luukkonen because Luukkonen's existing. So right now they have no goaltender. They have to have a goaltender to protect.
Yeah, I don't know if they're allowed to protect Ullmark because his contract's technically up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that counts. Like, I mean, maybe it does, but I mean, Seattle could just be like, screw it, we'll just sign him anyways.
Right.
just be like, we don't, at least then Buffalo doesn't have to worry about losing a guy because they would already lost him. But
they can protect Michael Hauser. That's who they can protect.
Well,
it's going to be the worst goalie ever protected in NHL history. No offense to the guy, but it's
if it's Ullmark, and it could be, and I'm looking at Cap Friendly's expansion.
Why would it be Ullmark? He'll be a free agent.
Right, but they have to protect somebody, Russ.
Right.
So you're protecting someone you have there's no way you could sign.
Well, no, but they could protect him and then trade his rights for a draft pick.
Oh my God! So they're huddling up with like a fourth round draft pick.
It's not me who set up this situation. It's Kevin Adams.
It doesn't make sense.
I know. Mm-hmm. I agree. But yeah, I think Freddie Anderson, if the most money he's going to get probably is around $4 million, and I
think you could get $5 for like a 2-year, $10 million. That's it.
I don't know.
He wants like a 4-year deal. Probably he won't get $20 million.
Mm-mm.
Not from Edmonton. Not from no. I don't know.
I don't know how you can trust it.
2020, Mike Ogello would give it to him. 2021, Mike Ogello has finally realized he wouldn't give it to him. That's the one jump that Mike Ogello has made in his career this year.
I
It's true, because beginning of the season, should we roll back the tape? How you felt about Freddie beginning of the season?
Russ, I just said a minute ago that he was not responsible for the playoff demise of the Maple Leafs. It was their defense. And he didn't play badly against Columbus last year. It wasn't his fault that they lost. They didn't score. The last two playoffs, Russ, they couldn't score goals when they needed to.
Tell me the game that Freddie Anderson stole, too.
When? Last year? A
year.
Oh.
Any goddamn year.
For Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.